Okay, so let's come to our faith panel, backed by popular demand. We've got our panel where we look at news stories this week. Joining us today, Stephen Fletcher, who's the Church of England lay minister, and we have the young... all right, we've got a little bit of a problem there. We'll hope to get him back. And we've got Sabah Ahmadi, the young Imam. So these are the questions we're putting to them, and I'm putting to you. There's an Australian TikToker that's in the news. He's 22. He films random acts of kindness, but he's been branded the exploitation king and disrespectful. Now, what he did is he goes up to who he sees, and bear in mind, at 22, anybody over the age of 50 is a little old lady, hands him a bunch of flowers and says, there you are, have a nice day. But he films them, and it's hashtag acts of kindness on TikTok. He's racked up millions of views. He's a university business student who works in retail. And this clip that I'm talking about was viewed at least 58.8 million times. He's received threats as a result of that. As a result of this, because the woman he actually filmed in this particular clip I'm talking about actually was pretty embarrassed. She didn't know she was being filmed. She saw some guy with a phone, and in the interview that I listened to, she said, looking back, at the time she thought it was funny, but looking back, and 58.8 million times looking back, she just said, look, if it can happen to me, it can happen to other people. And she didn't give the okay to be filmed or anything like that. He also gives food to homeless people and films them and puts that on social media. So let me also tell you that this footage makes him between 10,000 and 15,000 Australian dollars a month through brand partnerships and sponsored deals. So here's the question. If you record yourself or brag about a so-called selfless act of kindness, what's it all about? Should we just shove that to one side, that this person is either bragging or filming it and putting it out on social media and say, well, the bottom line is they're still being kind? Or do you think there's something else a little bit more sinister? So that's what we're putting to our faith panel. Let's come to, before we get Stephen back up, let's talk to the young Imam, Sabah Ahmadi. Welcome. It's lovely to have you back on the show.
Thanks, Tricia. Yeah, it's great to be back. And can I just say one point I wanted to pick up on in the comment you mentioned before, where you said, what your mum said was, if you don't got anything nice to say, don't say it, And it's what Islam teaches. Speak a good word or remain silent, because it's quality, right? You save so many arguments and disagreements. But sorry, back to your question. Tell me again, and let's give it a crack.
So the question is, if you record yourself doing a random, like this TikToker, he films himself and he's making money out of it. If you film yourself doing a random act of kindness, or you brag about it to your friends, you know what, I did this for this person. Does it negate what you've done? Does it take it away? Should you just be kind and shut up about it?
I think when it comes to what faith teaches, there's two aspects to this. One aspect is doing things quietly, and also another aspect is obviously doing it and encouraging others to do that act of kindness. So there's two examples, and each individual circumstance can be different. And Islam also says that don't let your left hand see what your right hand has given. So in some circumstances, it should be encouraged to share your acts of kindness, to encourage other people to do good things, but purely only to encourage them, right? Because ultimately the end goal is to seek God's love and pleasure, because you're doing it for God's sake. You're looking after God's people.
But let me jump in. Let me jump in there, because this is what this young Australian TikToker is saying. That because there's this hashtag acts of kindness apparently on TikTok. He's saying that, but my issue is that I didn't realise, but his posts and everything make him between 10,000 and 15,000 Australian dollars because of all the sponsorship and what have you. So on one hand, he probably is encouraging other young people to do random acts of kindness, but is he encouraging them to do it so that they too can get sponsorship and make a lot of money? Do you see what I mean?
I do, but I think it's about your intention as well. And I also encourage people to do acts of kindness. Like on my Instagram page, on my Instagram stories, I'll put in my stories to remind people to help their neighbours by just taking their bins out, right? And also other examples of acts of kindness. And like we said, some should be done in the open and some should be done secretly. Like you have fundraising events, right, where people sit in a room and they say, oh yeah, we'll give this much money to charity. And that act of kindness encourages other people to also give generously and donate. But other circumstances
but
where maybe...
But I was going to say, but Imam, what about filming yourself doing that? Because I hear what you're saying to the camera, you know, it'd be really helpful if you help your neighbour take the bins out. It's different. But what if you went up to that bin, took the neighbour's bin out, had somebody film you doing it, you know, or you helped out a neighbor and you had somebody filming it and then putting it on social media, and especially if that person doesn't know.
Because, you know, sometimes you can't win. Yeah. You do a good deed and you're slated for it, and you don't do a good deed and you're still questioned about it.
Yeah.
Right. So it comes down to your intention. Do you know what I mean? What do you want to gain out of this? Should be for the pleasure of God Almighty, encouraging other people to do good. And it shouldn't be there for you to brag and boast and say, oh, look how great I am. Rather, it should be to encourage other people on the path of goodness, helping other people on that path.
All right, we finally got Stephen Fletcher. We've got a little bit of time. Stephen, let me come to you in just a second. We'll take a quick breather, and I'll come to you and just ponder that question, and we'll be back with you to answer that question about what is a random act of kindness, and is it still the same if you film it like this young guy has. Welcome back. We're with our faith panel, the young Imam, Sabah Ahmadi, and we have Stephen Fletcher, who is a Church of England lay minister. Stephen, coming to you, we're talking about this random acts of kindness. Is it still a random act of kindness if you film yourself doing it and you put a hashtag on it, and in this young man's case, you earn a lot of money from it? The young Imam is saying that on many cases, you should encourage people to do random acts of kindness. And in this young man's defense, he will probably say he is doing that. Your feelings on this?
I think it's totally wrong. I don't think you should be advertising yourself. And, it's probably in the Quran, it's certainly in the Bible that you shouldn't, let me just quote a little bit. I won't go on, but, be careful not to practice your... Be careful not to practice your righteousness in front of others to be seen by them. If you do, you will have no reward from your Father in heaven. So when you give to the needy, do not announce it with trumpets, as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and on the streets, to be honoured by others. Truly, I tell you, they have received their reward in full. So, it's quite clear. I totally agree with our friend, the Imam, that you shouldn't be... You shouldn't be advertising it, and certainly not posting it. That's you shouldn't.
Well, the young Imam was saying that you should. You're damned if you do, and you're damned if you don't. If I'm right there, and I can see as well. I guess for me, the whole thing was that he earns. I mean, I read all through this, and like you, Sabah, I was like, yeah. He is encouraging young people. But I think for me, when I read that it makes him between $10,000 and $15,000 a month through sponsors, I was like, okay, why don't you donate all of that to charity? Why, if at least that would kind of that's the bit, Imam, that for me that made me feel uncomfortable, that he earns money. And these people in television, if we film in the street, we have to have people agree to be on camera. And they don't, because they're homeless or what, they don't get the right to say if they're on camera or not. And those are the things that stuck with me. So I agree with you, damned if you do, if you're damned if you don't. But to me, I kind of think you're damned if you make a lot of money from it. Anyway, I want to move on to our next question, because both of you addressed so nicely. And my question is, it's for people who can see, it's so hot, and there's all these articles about women saying go braless or don't wear your underwear. There's guys, and we're doing, we're doing a story with our doctor later on about how men are getting more skin cancers because they're going around without their shirt off. In other words, people are wearing on the streets what normally is only seen as acceptable on the beach. So my question to both of you is the sun and the very hot weather an excuse to become, shall we say, less modest? Or do you think, like Richard Tice, you need to have standards? Imam?
Yeah, good question. Can't we be cool and also be covered? Because that's what the government tells us to do. Yeah? The government tells us to wear your sun cream, tell you to wear loose clothes. And also, actually, when we take our kids to nursery, we're told by the teachers, can you make sure your kids have got a hat because they get quite overheated, right? So that's what we've got to take into consideration. Also, with babies, they're encouraged to wear quite thin clothes, cotton, because if you're exposed to the sun too much, then you're more at risk of getting skin cancer or sunstroke. And then you see people, unfortunately, who are really sunburned, and they're like, oh, I wish I wore a sun hat. So you can be both.
Yeah. That's a good, so you're taking it away from morality and you're putting it, and you're absolutely right. There's a health point of view to this. Let me come to you, Stephen. What are your thoughts?
I think, modesty in all things. I think absolutely from the practical point of view, you should be careful and we should cover up and all the rest of it. But, I think we should really dress modesty. Again, there's biblical precedents for that. So I think really we ought to be just modest.
What's the biblical, what would you say, sorry to jump in there, what would you say the biblical precedence is for that?
Well, in Paul's letter to Timothy, which I just happen to have in front of me now, he says, I want the women to dress modestly, with decency and propriety, adorning themselves, not with elaborate hairstyles or gold or pearls or expensive clothes, but with good deeds appropriate for women who profess to worship God. So let me preface that by saying that Paul was writing at a time when women were regarded differently in society, 2,000 years ago than they are now. So, he might appear to be a little harsh on women there, but, basically that's it. You should dress modestly.
I was going to say, what about men?
Exactly.
What about men?
I accept that totally, and it applies to men, and I'm sure many translations of the Bible might well say that. But we should dress modestly with decency and propriety.
Imam?
Yeah, I think with Islam, Islam teaches for both men and women to dress modestly. And I think, sometimes it might not always be the weather. Like part of my training to become an Imam, I went to Senegal for a month and the heat there was incredible, yeah? But both men and women had long dresses on and they were chilling, that they were so cool in their thin clothes. And then if you look in the winter, I'm born and bred in Manchester, and in the evening, even when it's freezing cold, people in the north, they wear a T-shirt and shorts and go out. So people are free to dress how they want to dress. Do you know what I mean? So that's when it comes to Islamic teachings, men and women are both told to dress modestly. And I think that's really important. So not only is there heat, but also people tend to cover up because it keeps them cool and their skin doesn't start burning.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point that you make. From a health point of view, I mean, people often think the less clothing they have on keeps them cooler, but as you say, I mean, sunburn, and all of those sorts of things start happening when you don't dress appropriately. But how much is, again, don't you think that people, and Imam, for both of you, but Imam, I'll start with you. There is, how can I put it, a woman completely covered, especially I'd say in London, they probably attract, and we've talked about this before, are they at risk in certain areas of attracting hostility and so on? Because they're not dressed like everybody else in a bikini or with everything hanging out.
So is that to me, Trisha?
Yes, sorry. Yes, Imam, yeah.
Yeah, I think people should respect how others feel they would like to express themselves through the way that they dress. I don't think someone should be targeted for wearing a certain item of clothing. And I think we champion the fact that we live in such a multicultural society. And with that ownership and championing that, our behavior should reflect those respect and those aspects of equality and justice. So if someone is targeted based on what they wear, regardless of what that might be, that is not appropriate. And people should be able to express themselves how they wish to.
Yeah, how they choose to. Stephen?
Yeah, I totally agree. And, you should be pointing the finger at the people who are attacking the women who are dressed as they choose to dress, rather than attacking the women for choosing how they want to dress. Again, it's a matter of choice, and we should let people do what they feel comfortable with. But at the back of it, I think you have to accept that overall we should be modest and decent and have propriety in our dress, in whatever way we do it. But I
so let me ask you why. Let me ask you what the reason is. Because we know it's not about, for instance, in the case of women being attacked, because women have been attacked sexually all over the world, no matter what they're wearing, whether they're covered up, not covered up, or what have you. I mean, that's something that's long been dispelled with. So let me just throw out the question: why be quote unquote modest? Why not? Because especially on social media, I'm sure you'll both agree, there's this, if you've got it, flaunt it, that whole doctrine. Let me ask you, what's wrong with that?
Well, I don't think you'd want to see me flaunting anything, but I think that, yes, people, I was just advocating people have freedom to dress as they want, and they do. But, you asked me in the context of a lay minister, I would say that you dress appropriately and modestly and with decency, and people can do what they want. But if you're asking me, I will try and do that.
Yeah.
Try and dress appropriately and modestly, and hope that others do too. I mean, we don't want, goodness, you don't want to see people flaunting themselves. I mean, that's what it amounts to in many ways, the more outrageous things. But there we are.
Imam, would you agree? There is that culture out there, isn't it? And young people are often up for it, if you like. If you've got it, flaunt it and showing everything.
Yeah, I think we live in a society where, again, it's really important for people to be able to express themselves how they want to be expressed. There's no compulsion religion. And, in some countries, there was a report in the news not long ago about how a city or a town in Italy decided that you can't dress a certain way from wearing a bikini because it wasn't according to their social norms. So it's about just respecting that. And if someone does want to wear that, then they can go elsewhere and wear that. But if someone wants to dress how they want to dress, if I want to wear my hat like this, or I want to wear glasses, or I want to wear sunglasses, right? I'm not hurting anybody else's sentiments or feelings or values. I'm living my life how I would like to live my life. And it's about respecting that.
Thank you.
And just being tolerant.
Thank you. That's always the theme when it comes to faith: respect and listening and understanding. So I thank both of you again for being part of our faith panel.